Hi, this is DrumWise Meets. Today I'm here with Vinnie Fiorello. He is the co-founder of Less Than Jake and the label Fueled by Ramen. Hi Vinnie.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Okay, so my first question today is, what age did you start playing drums? And when you started, what sort of music or artists inspired you?
So I was 12 and it was Christmas was coming up. I remember it was a little bit after Halloween, and my parents said to me and my brother, who's 4 years older than me, so he was 16, and hey, you guys really should, think about playing an instrument. Both my dad was musical, but it was a musical family, listened to a lot of records, kind of hung out around the turntable and kind of talked. That was like Saturdays and Sundays. So my parents really wanted us to learn an instrument. So quicker than like a split second, my brother goes, "I want to play guitar," and I went, "Oh, that's what I want. That's what I wanted." And he goes, "Family could only have one guitar player, bro. Like, you have to figure something else out." And I went, "Okay, I'll play drums." And so Christmas, when I was 12, I got my first drum kit, and I was living in New Jersey at the time. And there was a famous music store that was in a few towns up from where I lived called Loria's Music. And I went in, and my dad said, "You could pick out your drum set. This is going to be your Christmas present." And he gave me the budget, and I walked up and down the aisles, and I decided on getting a black CB 700 drum set. And Christmas Day, I walked out, and it was set up right in, haphazardly, mind you, but set up over by the Christmas tree. And it started a long history of making noise, banging shit around. So
Awesome. And when you first started playing, what music were you listening to? What was the stuff that really got you like playing?
you know what? It was my brother was a big influence on that. So he really got into some new wave at that time, right? So it was the Knack, and it was Blondie. And then he got into like kind of more rock, like Journey and things like that. So he'd be noodling in his room, and I would hear the music, and I would try to emulate it. It's I remember trying to figure out Billy Squire, right? The Stroke, which has this like kind of like this tribal beat to it, and it's just kind of like kick and snare. And I was like, I got to try to figure this out. And I thought it was going to be easy, but it wound up being overly complicated at that moment, right? So it was just anything that was getting played in the house. My brother was 4 years older than me, so he was discovering a bunch of music, everything from early Motley Crue and early Queensryche. Kiss was my band, right? I loved Kiss, so anything that had to do with that, I'd be there trying to figure out, drums in Detroit Rock City and Cold Gin and things like that. And it was cool. And like I said, I was in a musical family, so listened to everything from Motown and doo-wop to 70s rock to 80s rock. And it was a cool feeling, man, to be amongst music lovers like that. So that's really the tip of just, accept everything. And a good song's a good song. It didn't matter what it was. A good song's a good song. So that's where my head sort of aligned at that time.
Absolutely. And when you were touring with Less Than Jake, I imagine you used, different equipment over the years, but what was your kind of like preferred setup? What was the stuff that you just loved using?
You know what? It's I fell in love with, at first, Tama drums and Rockstar, and I loved the way that it sounded. And then later, the last maybe 7 years, been using Sonar, and that's 22, 13, 16, and then the 14 by 6 Brady that I got in Australia. And
yeah.
and that setup for me was always good. 14 on HHX Sabian hats, 18 and 19 AAX Heavy Crash, and then a 21-inch dry ride And that was my setup, and still is. You know, when I have it set up in my warehouse and going there and banging out, and I've been doing some music as well. So you got to keep the chops up, even though I'm not touring. You still have to go in there and do what you love to do. One of my passions is always drums. So,
and actually, we'll get onto that a bit later. So, I've asked you about your musical influences, but if you had to pick just one, could you tell me who your all-time favorite drummer is?
Yeah, and that would be a very obscure person. Some people who know punk rock might know the drummer, but it's Aaron Comet Bus, and he's played for Sweet Baby and played in Crimp Shrine and played in a band with Billy Joe from Green Day called Pinhead Gunpowder. And he is the one drummer that also did lyrics, and that he did a zine, and he wrote these sort of like tour journals that he put out. And that right there for me, when I discovered it, it was 1996. It was a whole new world for me. It was, you mean drummers can do lyrics, and drummers can, you know, help write songs and be creative and do the packaging and t-shirt designs? And my mind was blown out. Like that's, and it started me on a whole new path of thought after finding him, you know.
Cool. And that's a great answer. That links me really nicely to something I was going to ask you. So with Less Than Jake, it wasn't just playing drums that was your role, was it? There was a lot more going on. So, you know, lyrics, things like that.
I mean, lyrics, but a lot of art direction and a lot of merchandise, and just generally speaking, you know, helping push the iceberg that is being a band, right? Upwards. And some people, you know, go and when they think, they go, oh, being in a band's easy. Well, sometimes it is, and sometimes it's absolutely mindless fun, and that's great. And other times there's other decisions that you have to make, right? And I didn't mind that. And I always, you know, when drummers go, can you give me any advice? And I go, yeah, I totally can. And that's be more than a drummer. A drummer is great, but bringing other things to the table, whether it be, you know, knowing how to record, whether it be gear, whether it be lighting, merchandise, whatever, bring something else to the table too, because ultimately that's what being in a band will wind up being. You have to do double duty and triple duty and quadruple duty. So bring something else and prepare for maybe the drums aren't working for you and you're not going to get that dream gig. Well, you might run into a dream gig by accident doing lights or doing sound. And that's a cool way. If you're around creatives and you're around live music or whatever, you run into people all the time and opportunities. Just be prepared for it, man, and be open. It doesn't have to be drums. It could be something else. You want it to be drums, but sometimes you have to pull it, you know, put it all on your back and march forward. Cool. In my brain, that's the cool thing about being a musician, right? Like,
yeah, and that's great advice. And actually, just it's kind of what I did in a sense. I wanted to do drums, but I thought, oh, I don't know about going away and trying to be in a band. So I know I'll start DrumWise, and you know, so it's still drums, but it's not drums in the sort of playing sense all the time. But you know, it's just kind of thinking outside the box, to use that phrase, isn't it? You know.
Well, I mean, we're in that kind of like in flux area of time and how people, you know, digest music and how people sort of where they look to find their content. Dude, it's good to jump into something else. And what you're doing is right on, because you never know when someone's going to go, oh yeah, like I want to know about these other drummers and their setups and more, you know, about them personally and their experiences being a professional player, right? And it's a good way, you know, content, the world runs on content, especially now that you can find it on your mobile phone. You can do whatever to it. So adding to great content out into the world to stamp out the bullshit content is always a good thing.
Exactly. Now, this is possibly a hard question. What's been the highlight of your career so far?
I know it right off the bat.
Okay.
2003 main stage Reading Festival.
Oh, now how weird that you should say that. I was there.
Yeah, that's it. When you're looking out and you see 90,000 people and you see 20,000 people jumping up and down to one of your songs, and that emotion and feeling that everything that you've done is at that pinnacle right there, that moment.
Yeah.
That 60 minutes, man, that was, Chris, the guitar player and singer, Listen Jake, he said it to me before. It's like, those 60 minutes, we were the biggest band in the world for that 60 minutes. Yeah. And fuck, man, it really felt like that. And that's the moment. Yeah. That's the moment, hands down.
Was that just making sure it was definitely I must have been the right year, because you wouldn't have played the year before. Chris had really proper spiky hair, and I came to see you guys in the signing tent afterwards. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's awesome.
And No Effects were on as well, weren't they?
I don't know if they were, because we just kind of rolled in on it, and we didn't go over to where it would have been, where No Effects would have been, the lockup tent probably. Yeah. So I didn't personally wander over there, so I don't know who was on that.
Okay, yeah. It was a good year of Reading though, that one, definitely. So speaking about playing live and festivals and things, have you ever had anything go wrong on stage that you've had to recover from that you can tell us about?
Yeah, every show there's something like that. Like it's not, all dialed in all the time. It could be anything from, being at a festival, I remember, right? And the monitors just go down. It was a festival in Holland. It was 3 years ago, and the monitors just go out. And it's not just, it's all the front line still has monitors. It's just the wedge that's gone for me. So everybody else is like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I guess, we're going to play, I guess, and figure it out. But there's always stories, whether it be that or someone comes up and wants to fight the band, like winds up on stage. Those things, something in the moment are horrifying, because you're trying to, someone in the back doesn't understand that the monitor is out. They just want to see the show. So you're trying to maintain the sense of calm and moving forward and trying to hold it together. But inside, you're freaking out, man. Like you're just going, there's a top that's spinning inside me, 1,000 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And, but with that said, there was one thing in particular that happened. It was in Salt Lake City. It was about 6 years ago. There's a guy that we weren't, it was a club show, so we weren't carrying a monitor person. And the guy walks in, the monitor person goes, hey, I'm here to do this. Okay, cool. And just kind of shoot shit. And they started to go through everything and start just feedback. It's like, what is going on? He's like, well, I've never done monitors before. This is my first time doing monitors. Is tonight. I figured that, it's just the sound company just said, just use the volume. Don't worry about anything. I'm like, oh, so that night, just first song in, it was just like, things 1,000, volume just blasting my face, and, everything just going wrong. And you just have to try to hold it together, man. And that whole entire time was just in my brain going, this isn't fun at all, but we play a fun type of music and have a fun type of show. So I just was like, you just gotta tunnel vision, and you gotta play it through it, and just don't act like things are just falling apart. And they progressively just fell apart too. Like pandemonium, where I just had the roadie, one of the techs, pull the power on it, and I just went without for like the last maybe a quarter of the set.
Oh man. Did you ever use click? So did you ever have problems with stuff like that?
You know what? We always went with we're a punk rock band, so live we just went, man. Like it was, throw everything, pull the faders up, throw it all into the wedge, and let's get wild, right? Yeah. And sometimes you look back and go, holy shit, that was fast. And sometimes you're like, oh man, that seems slow or whatever it was. And everyone has their own world that they live in too, where after the set, if you talk to the 5 people about the show, it'd be like, we played too fast. We're slow everywhere. And this was not in tune. And you're just like, oh, so everyone gets in their own head about like the set. But sometimes in those brief moments where the groove is there and the crowd is there and that chemical reaction, like you don't need the click, man. Like that the slowing down just at the right time and speeding up to make the crowd just like it froth, get into that frenzy, you know, like sometimes you want that the click doesn't provide, you know, and in the studio it's totally different. You put on the cans and hey, this one's going to be at 108 BPM. This one's going to be 128 BPM, whatever it is. Right. And you go, okay, cool. And you do that and you're constrained. Live though, it's another animal. You want to get wild. Let's be savages out there. If it's a little sloppy, let's do that, man. Let's get crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. Cool. My kind of curveball questions are coming up, but first I've got a kind of Less Than Jake fan question from me, really. I saw you guys, I don't know, 10 years ago in London, and you did a song that was for a commercial for breakfast cereal, Do the Pacman.
Yes.
What was that all about? Because I didn't.
We had done a record called the TV EP, and it was just a fun thing, right? And it was just all you know, adverts, right, that we did, and intros to like some TV commercials and things. But Chris got into this whole thing about like, you know, backstory. They came to us and we did the song and it's going to be on commercials. And it was just, you know, like, it was just bullshit at the time, you know, like,
right, okay.
But it was never true, but it sounded good at the time. And it made people extra excited to embrace a stupid song called Pacman cereal, right? So like, if we played it without all the hype, it would have laid there. But with the hype, people were like, it's going to be on a commercial. We're going to get like excited. Like, all right, yeah.
Well, I can't remember how long ago that was, but I've thought that it was for a commercial since then. So you had me hanging for all this time. So it worked. Right. So a curveball question for you. So what are your hobbies away from drumming?
Well, a lot of it is like business side point stuff, right? So I co-own a tattoo shop in town called Wonderland. I also put out toys of different characters for Wonderland War is what it's called. I released some vinyl records under Paper and Plastic. But recently, I just released a book of short stories called 619. And it's where I wrote a short story every day for all of last June. So starting June 1st, then ending the 30th, right? So for me, I've been kind of, since I haven't been touring, I've been kind of diving a little bit deeper into the writing side of it. So about halfway through my first novel, and that feels good. But I started last spring doing it, but I got sidetracked because there's all those fears, you know, even though you did lyrics, even though you did play in front of people, I started to go, do people like the way I write and this? So that lesson for me and that exercise was 619, to be able to do it and complete it and have it out and let people digest it and sort of give their view on it, you know, and while I continued to kind of peck through that headspace of doing the novel.
Yeah, good stuff. And while we're talking about things like that, can you talk to us about how Fueled by Ramen came around? So maybe for people that don't know, if you can explain what it is as well, and maybe a couple of the artists that you've got on the roster.
Well, Fueled by basically started as a label that of when Less Than Jake first started touring in the early 90s, we would play with a lot of local bands, right? It wouldn't be a package of 3 or 4 bands. So we would go in and go, oh, we're playing with this local band tonight from Austin. And that happened to be the Impossibles, right? So, okay, cool. We get their CD or their demo tape, and we're driving around in the van, and we're listening to it and go, oh, well, this is cool. And you talk to them, at that time you wrote them a letter, you called them and said, hey, like, what are you guys doing? Like, we love this, and, let's tour and let's do this. And a lot of times coming back would be, well, we're not going to do anything with it. That was before you'd be able to put, songs up on SoundCloud or Spotify or whatever. And I went, cool, man. Like, maybe, can I help put it out? And can we figure it out? And that started a chain reaction of finding bands on tour and then helping release. And that turned into a bigger chain reaction of finding younger bands that we didn't happen to play with, but were influenced by my generation of music, and we started to release those. So early on, that was Fall Out Boy and Gym Class Heroes, and Fueled By released Paramore early records. So it turned into something much bigger than I could have ever imagined. But it just all came from that simple idea of, we played with these amazing bands, but they weren't doing anything with that except for staying local or staying like a statewide band. And I went, oh, this should change. And that was my headspace then, and certainly my headspace now.
My last curveball question. What's your favorite cookie?
Favorite cookie would be, there's I don't know if it's a chain of hotels in the UK or not. Doubletree, is it?
Yes. Yeah.
So Doubletree has a specific cookie that they give you when you show up.
Yes.
So it's like kind of like has 3 or 4 different like kind of taste to it. It's like chocolate chip cookie, but there's nuts in it, and there's like some other stuff. That's my favorite cookie. It's a Doubletree cookie that you get for free when you go.
Yes, I had one of those not too long ago, and was it warm? They give it to you warm.
They have a warmer right next to it, and then.
And I was just like, what is this? I've never had this before when I've gone into a hotel.
That's my favorite cookie, hands down. And then second favorite cookie would be a Girl Scout cookie called the Samoa, which is caramel and coconut and this whole thing. So
nice.
I know cookies, and that's my.
And this might be a good opportunity to ask you, if you can tell us, what was the most crazy thing that was ever on Less Than Jake's rider?
You know what? We never played rider games with that, man. Like, but there was a time where we had our friend Carlos, who was tour managing us when our tour manager that usually worked with us wasn't around, wasn't available. And he would put the crazy things like, we need parts to make a beer bong. And he would like put them on there, and it wouldn't be on the rider, but it would be on like the day rider, Yeah. And he also had, for that tour, he was looking for a shotgun to see if he could like purchase a shotgun throughout the States. And it almost happened once, but other times people were like, I'm not going to buy you guys shotgun. I don't care what you think. I don't care who you are. I'm not buying it. But that tour was a very weird tour. And he was, a pro at it enough where he wanted to make it fun. So it was just anything and everything. Like, dude, like, we're going to get Everclear for tonight, like the 190 proof or whatever stuff. And like, okay, that's what we're going to do. But we never had it on our usual rider that went out like, we never played like rider game like that. It's funny because we had toured in 97 with Blink, and they were putting like, we need white socks and boxer shorts and stuff, and they never got them until one night in Montana, Missoula, Montana, where I remember Tom going, they got me the socks, I can't believe they got the socks, like, this is amazing. And it goes to show you that you sometimes you put things as a joke on there, and they pop out, and someone surprises you with it.
Oh, I'm glad I asked you that question now. That's great. So what I'm going to change this question for you, I think, because I normally say, what one bit of advice could you give to up and coming drummers? But I think for you, it might be more relevant because you've been with Less Than Jake from the beginning. Maybe it's better to ask what advice could you give to a drummer who's in a band that wants to make that band a success?
Just work hard, man. Like that's so cliche, man, but it's there's no magic wand, right? The success isn't a one stroke thing where you go, oh, this is the thing and it's successful. Even if you got to the point where you had this stroke of luck and your song became a single and that became a hit, that doesn't guarantee you success beyond that point, right? You still have to work hard about it. You still have to make the right decisions. So for me, it would be always, if there's a drummer who's saying, what can I do to help the band be a success? I would slow and steady work. You work every day on it a little bit and you push that. And I always use the metaphor. You have this huge iceberg and you're pushing it, and you can never push it straight away all the way up to the top of the hill, but little by little you could lean into it and you'll start to get that motion, right? Mm-hmm. And you'll find that, again, if you work every day on it a little bit every day, you'll start to find that there's a momentum that happens naturally. And that's the honest, God truth about it. Like that, if you keep on just, and it's not like I'm hustling, I'm crushing it, bro. It's not that. It's like you're doing logical work that pushes your band forward. If you do it every day, it's going to create a momentum that it's going to go whatever. And I've explained it before too. Some bands are Toyotas, and no matter what, maxed out, it's only going to be a Toyota, man. Like, it's going to handle like a Toyota, and that's it. There's other bands that are meant to be a Lamborghini, and when it's maxed out, it's a beautiful thing, and like it goes faster and handles better and everything. So you never know that sometimes success for different bands is most definitely a different thing, man. Like, and sometimes your band is meant for this ceiling, and other times your band is meant for the 3 times as high a ceiling, man. So I think that, and all of them are a general victory, right? It doesn't matter, right? So I think that anyone out there that's watching this and listening, it's like, just work hard, man, and work hard every day and push into it. Now's the time to do it, man. And we talked a little bit off camera about it, but now's the time not to go, oh, it's tough out there and there's no touring and I'm just going to hang back. No, now's the time to go, I'm going to push into what's going on and not use the anything that's going on in the world as a reason to not work hard.
Vinnie, thank you so much for spending your time with us here at DrumWise. It really has been a real pleasure, especially for me, talking to you. You know, I've been a fan of Less Than Jake for a long time. So stay safe and all the best.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's great.